The morning light streamed through the blinds, landing softly on the old armchair where I'd spent most of my mornings since my husband, Henry, passed away 5 years ago. The house was quiet now, too quiet. Once, it was filled with laughter, the sounds of football games on Sunday, and the smell of pancakes and bacon that I used to make for my boys. Now, only the ticking clock on the kitchen wall reminded me that time was still moving, that I had just turned 69 last month. My body wasn't what it used to be, but my mind, oh, it was as alive as ever. I could still cook, drive, even manage my small garden out back. Yet, to my son Eric, none of that seemed to matter anymore. He'd been visiting less and less since he got promoted at work and bought that new house in the suburbs. His wife, Susan, always seemed to have some excuse when I asked if they'd come by for dinner. Mom, we've got the kids' soccer practice, or we're remodeling the kitchen, maybe next week. Next week never came. That Sunday morning, I was sitting at the table reading the newspaper when I heard his car pull into the driveway. My heart fluttered. Eric never came unannounced anymore. I fixed my hair in the reflection of the microwave and tried to steady my excitement. Eric. I called as he stepped in. Hey, Mom. His tone was flat, his eyes glued to his phone. He didn't hug me. He just walked straight to the kitchen and poured himself a cup of coffee like he used to when he lived here. Something was different about him. Colder, distant. I smiled anyway. How are the kids? How's Susan? They're fine. He sat down, glancing at the clock like he had somewhere better to be. Then he sighed. Mom, we need to talk. The way he said it, like he was about to deliver a verdict, made my stomach twist. He took a deep breath. You can't keep living like this. Alone. It's not safe. I'm perfectly fine, Eric, I said, forcing a laugh. I still cook, drive, I even fixed the sink last week. That's not the point. He interrupted sharply. You're almost 70, Mom. You fall once, you could break your hip. Who's going to help you then? I don't need anyone, I said quietly. I raised you and your brother with my own 2 hands, Eric. I'm not helpless. He didn't look moved. He took another sip of coffee. We've been talking, Susan and I, and we think it's time you consider a nursing home. My heart sank. I stared at him, not sure I'd heard correctly. A what? He sighed again, avoiding my eyes. It's just safer. They'll take care of you, make sure you eat, take your medicine. I don't need a stranger to take care of me, I snapped. My voice cracked, and I could feel tears welling up. You're talking about putting me away like some old piece of furniture. He didn't flinch. His face hardened. If you don't want to go to the nursing home, get a job. I froze. A job. For a second, I thought he was joking. But his expression didn't change. He stood, straightened his jacket, and said coldly, You said you don't want to be a burden. Well, prove it.
Pay your own bills, Mom.
Don't expect us to cover everything forever. And just like that, the boy I'd raised, the one who used to cry when I left him at kindergarten, walked out of my door like I was a stranger. When the sound of his car faded, the silence of the house returned, louder than ever that I sat at the table for a long time. His words echoed in my head like a cruel melody. If you don't want to go to the nursing home, get a job. I looked down at my hands, wrinkled, trembling slightly. These were the same hands that had packed his lunches, washed his uniforms, wiped his tears. Now, they were empty. That night, I couldn't sleep. I wandered through the house, touching the furniture, the family pictures, my whole life frozen in frames. Then, just before dawn, I made a decision. If my son thought I was useless, he was wrong. I'd show him, and myself, that I still had worth. The next morning, I dressed neatly in my best floral blouse, tied my gray hair into a bun, and stepped outside. The air was crisp, filled with the faint scent of rain. As I walked down the street, I smiled faintly, though my heart was heavy. Then, a car slowed down beside me. A young woman rolled down the window. Ma'am, are you okay? Do you need a ride? I hesitated, then smiled. Maybe I do. It was the beginning of something I didn't expect, a journey that would change everything. The woman in the car looked to be in her early 30s, warm eyes, short brown hair tucked behind her ears, and a kind smile that instantly softened something in me. Where are you headed, ma'am? She asked again, but I hesitated for a moment, clutching my old purse. Just out for a walk, I said, her brow furrowed. It's chilly this morning. You sure you don't want to ride somewhere? I can drop you off. I looked up and down the empty street. The small town of Cedarville was quiet, just the distant hum of cars on the highway. For the first time in years, I didn't know where I was going. Maybe that's why I nodded. All right, I said softly, maybe just to the town center. She smiled and unlocked the door. Hop in. I settled into the passenger seat. The car smelled faintly of vanilla and baby powder. There were children's toys scattered in the back seat, a stuffed bunny, a small pink shoe. I'm Laura, she said, pulling away from the curb. And you are? Margaret. I replied, forcing a polite smile. But everyone calls me Maggie. Well, nice to meet you, Maggie. You live around here? I nodded. For over 40 years. My husband and I bought our house when we first moved here. He passed away a few years ago. I'm sorry, Laura said softly. That must have been hard. It was, I admitted. But the silence afterward was harder. She nodded, glancing at me. You remind me of my mom. She passed too.
Cancer.
I still talk to her sometimes, just out loud, like she's in the car with me. Something about her tone touched me deeply. You're a kind girl, I said. She smiled faintly. I try. We drove through the quiet streets, past the coffee shop, the pharmacy, the same post office where I used to mail Eric's college care packages. It felt strange. All those years of my life wrapped up in familiar places that no longer recognized me. What brings you out this early? Laura asked, but I hesitated. I'm looking for work. She looked surprised but didn't laugh, didn't question my age. Good for you, she said. What kind of work? I sighed. Anything really. Something that reminds me I'm still alive. Laura smiled. You know, my restaurant could use some help. It's small, nothing fancy, but my morning baker just quit. My eyes widened. A restaurant?
Yep.
Laura's Diner, just a few blocks over. We make everything from scratch. You bake. I chuckled softly. My apple pies used to win every church fair in this town. Well, she said, grinning. Then maybe this ride was fate. She pulled into a small parking lot in front of a cozy diner with red awnings and a hand-painted sign. Inside, through the glass windows, I saw a few customers sipping coffee while the scent of fresh pancakes filled the air. It felt alive. We walked in together, and immediately a few heads turned. Laura led me behind the counter. Maggie, meet Joe, she said, pointing to a man flipping pancakes on the griddle. He's been with me since day one. Joe gave me a friendly nod. Welcome to the chaos. Laura handed me an apron. You think you can make your famous apple pie here? I smiled for the first time in days. I'd love to try. That morning, I rolled up my sleeves and got to work. The kitchen smelled of butter and cinnamon as I mixed the dough by hand. It felt like coming home, like the years had peeled away, leaving just the woman I used to be. When the pie came out golden and perfect, the customers cheered as Laura brought out slices to sample. This is heavenly, someone exclaimed. Another woman asked, Who made this? Laura grinned. Our new baker, Miss Maggie. And just like that, something inside me shifted. For the first time since Henry's death, I felt seen. Useful. Needed. As the day wound down, I sat on the back steps of the diner, sipping coffee from a paper cup. The sun dipped behind the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Laura came out and sat beside me. You did amazing today, she said. You sure you haven't worked in a restaurant before? I laughed. Only in my kitchen, feeding 2 growing boys. Her smile faded slightly. You have kids? Yes, I said softly. 2 sons. One's in California and the other, my voice faltered. Well, he thinks I'm too old to live on my own? Laura frowned. That's not fair. It's not his fault, I said, though my throat tightened. He just forgot what love looks like when it has wrinkles. Laura was quiet for a moment, then reached over and patted my hand. You're welcome here, Maggie. As long as you want. We're family now. Tears filled my eyes. I looked up at the orange sky and whispered, "Thank you, God." That night, when I got home, the phone rang. It was Eric. "Mom," he said coldly, "I stopped by today. You weren't home." "I got a job," I said almost proudly. "A job?"
He scoffed.
"At your age? Mom, this is ridiculous." "I baked pies today," I said calmly. "And people smiled because of me. That's not ridiculous, Eric." He sighed. "Mom, I just want what's best for you." "No," I said gently. "You want what's easiest for you." There was a long silence. Then he said, "We'll talk later," and hung up. I stood there, phone in hand, heart aching. But beneath the ache, there was something new, strength. For the first time in years, I wasn't just surviving. I was living. The day the article came out, I woke up to the sound of my phone ringing nonstop. At first, I thought something was wrong. I wasn't used to so many calls. But when I finally picked up, it was Laura, her voice bubbling with excitement. "Maggie, you're in the paper. Front page of the Sunday lifestyle section." My heart skipped. "You're kidding." "I'm serious. Get dressed and come to the diner right now. You've got fans waiting." Fans, the word sounded foreign, like something that belonged to movie stars. Not a 70-year-old woman with flour on her hands. I put on my best cardigan, brushed my gray hair, and walked down the familiar street. At the corner, a young woman was reading the newspaper. I glanced at the front page and saw it, my photo, smiling behind the counter. A golden apple pie beside me. The pie that healed a heart. How one woman found her second chance at 69. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The story told everything. How I'd lost my husband, drifted apart from my son, and found purpose again through baking. They even quoted me, "You're never too old to start again." Sometimes, life begins after everyone thinks it's over. By the time I reached the diner, the parking lot was full. People were lining up outside, holding copies of the paper, some even holding little apple pies from grocery stores as if I'd blessed them. Laura was at the door, waving her arms like a conductor trying to keep order. When she saw me, she grinned. "Look who's famous now." I laughed nervously. "Oh, dear, I didn't expect all this."
"Too late," she said.
"They're here for you." Inside, it felt like a festival. People clapped when I walked in. Some wanted photos. Others wanted to shake my hand. One woman even cried as she hugged me. "You reminded me of my mom," she said through tears. "I haven't spoken to her in years. I'm calling her today." I smiled, tears in my own eyes. "Do that, dear. Don't let pride steal time from love." By noon, the diner had sold out of pies. Laura was laughing, exhausted, but glowing. "We're going to need a bigger oven." Later that afternoon, a man in a suit walked in. He wasn't a customer. He carried a sleek leather folder and spoke in that polished tone people in business suits often have. "Mrs. Hill," he asked. "Yes?" "I'm from a publishing company in Chicago. We read your story. We'd love to discuss a possible cookbook deal. Maybe even a short memoir. Your life, your recipes, your journey." My eyes widened. "A book." "Yes," he said with a kind smile. "You'd be surprised how many people need stories like yours. Stories of hope." I stared at him, speechless. "A book? Me? The same woman who'd once thought her life was over when her son told her to get a job." Laura squealed and hugged me. "Maggie, this is huge." I don't know what to say." I stammered. "Say yes," she whispered. "Oh, I did." The next few weeks felt like a dream. Every day, the diner was packed. People came from nearby towns just to meet the apple pie lady. Reporters dropped by for interviews. A local TV crew filmed a short feature. I was suddenly living in a whirlwind and loving every second. But amid the joy, there was something missing. Eric hadn't called. Not once since the day he'd come to the diner. I thought maybe he'd seen the article. Maybe he was proud, but silence was all I got, until one evening, as I was locking up, I saw a familiar car pull up. Eric stepped out slowly, holding a newspaper. "Hey, Mom." My throat tightened. "Hey, sweetheart." He held up the paper. "You're famous." I laughed softly. "So they tell me." He smiled faintly, then looked down. I read every word. I didn't know you felt that way, like I didn't see you anymore. I swallowed hard. I didn't want to make you feel guilty, Eric. You have your own life. I just missed being part of it.
He sighed.
I thought keeping you safe was enough, but I guess what you really needed was freedom. I nodded, and understanding. He looked up, eyes glistening. You're right. I was wrong. I reached out, touched his cheek, something I hadn't done since he was a boy. We both learned something, didn't we? He smiled through tears. I'm proud of you, Mom. That was all I needed to hear. Weeks passed, and I began working on my book. I wrote in the evenings at the diner after closing time, with Laura sitting beside me drinking tea. I wrote about my youth, my husband Henry, our dreams, our laughter. I wrote about my sons, the joy, the pain, the silence that grew between us. And I wrote about that one sentence that changed everything. If you don't want to go to the nursing home,
get a job.
How cruel it sounded at first, but how it became the spark that reignited my life. One rainy afternoon, I was sitting by the window with my notes spread out when Laura came running in. Maggie, you won't believe this, she said, holding up her phone. We just got an email. A producer from a morning show in New York wants to feature you next month. My jaw dropped. Me? On television. She laughed. You'll be on national TV, sweetheart. You're officially America's grandma now. I covered my face with my hands, laughing and crying all at once. That night, as I drove home, I passed by the nursing home Eric once mentioned. I slowed down, staring at the bright, sterile windows. Inside, a few old women sat in wheelchairs. Watching television, I whispered softly, "There but for courage, go I." I smiled, turned the corner, and drove toward the diner. My second home, my second chance. The letter of confirmation came in a pale blue envelope with elegant handwriting. Dear Mrs. Hill, we are honored to invite you to Good Morning America to share your inspiring story with our audience. Please confirm your travel dates at your earliest convenience. I must have read it a dozen times before it truly sank in. Good Morning America, the same show I used to watch every morning with Henry, my late husband, while sipping coffee and discussing the news. If only he could see me now. I pressed the letter to my heart and whispered, Henry, looks like I'm going to New York. The next few days were a blur of excitement. Laura helped me pick out outfits. You have to wear something bright, she said. You're representing every grandma in America. She even went with me to the mall, a place I hadn't visited in years. The young sales clerk smiled kindly as she handed me a soft blue dress. This color suits you, she said. It brings out the kindness in your eyes. When I saw myself in the mirror, I barely recognized the woman looking back, confident, radiant, alive. The day before my flight, Eric called. I saw the announcement, Mom, he said, his voice filled with pride. You're really doing this. I am, I said, smiling. Are you proud of your old mother now? He chuckled softly. I've always been proud. I just forgot to say it. There was a pause. Then he added, Michael wants to watch your interview live. He told his friends, my grandma's going to be on TV. Tears filled my eyes. That's the best thing I've heard all week. Break a leg, Mom, he said gently. I'll try not to trip on stage. I laughed. The flight to New York was my first in decades. I clutched my purse tightly, nervous but exhilarated. The world below looked so small, like all the problems I once thought were impossible to fix. When I landed, a young assistant from the network met me at the gate, holding a sign that read Mrs. Margaret Hill. She was cheerful and polite. It's an honor to meet you, Mrs. Hill. I loved your story. My grandma started her own business at 65 because of you. I smiled warmly. Then I've already made the trip worthwhile. The next morning, the studio was buzzing with lights, cameras, and people moving in every direction. The makeup artist dusted powder on my cheeks, and someone fixed the microphone to my blouse. I could see the hosts chatting at the table. The lights were so bright they made everything look like a dream. Then the producer whispered, You're on in 30 seconds. My heart raced. I whispered a small prayer. Ladies and gentlemen, the host announced, Our next guest has captured hearts across America with her story of resilience, love, and one unforgettable apple pie. Please welcome Mrs. Margaret Hill. Applause filled the studio as I walked on stage. I smiled, waving shyly. The host shook my hand. Maggie, it's such an honor to meet you. How does it feel to be called America's grandma? I laughed softly. Oh, it feels wonderful, but I think every grandmother in America deserves that title. The audience laughed warmly. They asked me about my life, my husband, the diner, and of course, Eric. When I mentioned the moment my son told me to get a job, the room went silent. I looked straight into the camera and said, "That day broke my heart, but it also saved me." Because sometimes love hurts in the moment, but later, it teaches you who you really are. Applause erupted again, and even the host looked misty-eyed. After the show, I was invited to the green room for coffee. The producer came in holding a large bouquet of lilies. "These are for you, Mrs. Hill. And there's someone here who wanted to meet you personally." I turned and froze. It was David, Henry's younger brother. I hadn't seen him in nearly 20 years. "Maggie," he said softly, his voice trembling. "I saw you on TV. You look just like you did the day Henry married you." Tears flooded my eyes. "David," he stepped forward and hugged me tightly. "I never got to tell you how sorry I was for losing touch after Henry passed. I should have been there." I held on to him, shaking. "You're here now." We talked for hours, about Henry, about family, about time lost and love rediscovered. It felt like a piece of my past had come home. Before we parted, he said, "Henry would be so proud of you, Maggie. You didn't just survive, you inspired the world." When I returned home to Cedarville, the diner was decorated with balloons and a banner that read "Welcome Home." TV star Laura hugged me so hard I could barely breathe. "You did it, Maggie." "I just told the truth," I said, smiling. The rest did itself. Eric arrived later with Susan and the kids. Michael ran up and hugged my legs. "Grandma, I saw you on TV. You're famous." I knelt down, hugging him tight. "Fame fades, sweetheart. But love stays." Eric stood quietly for a moment, then said, "Mom, I was wrong about everything. You're stronger than I ever gave you credit for." I smiled, brushing his cheek. "It's not about who's right, Eric. It's about finding our way back to each other." He nodded, tears glistening. "I missed you," I whispered. "Then let's never miss each other again." That night, after everyone left, I sat alone in my kitchen with a slice of pie and a cup of tea. The lights from outside glowed softly through the window. I looked up at the photo of Henry on the wall, young, smiling, alive. "You see that, Henry?" I whispered. "Your Maggie did it. She found her way again." I could almost hear his voice in my heart. "I never doubted you'd." I smiled through my tears, took a bite of pie, and felt an overwhelming peace. Life wasn't done with me yet. Moral of this part: when you believe your best days are behind you, life may surprise you with a sunrise brighter than any before. Sometimes, the greatest comeback stories begin when you stop looking backward and finally look toward yourself. The next morning, I woke up before dawn, something I hadn't done in years. My hands ached from the long hours at the diner, but there was a warmth in my chest that made the soreness feel like a reward. I brewed myself a cup of coffee, wrapped a scarf around my neck, and stepped outside. The world was still quiet, the kind of peace that only early morning brings. As I watched the first light spill over the horizon, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: hope. When I arrived at Laura's diner, she was already there, wiping down tables and humming to the radio. "Morning, sunshine," she said, smiling as I walked in. "Morning, dear," I replied, tying on my apron. "You're in early." "Big day," she said. "Local papers coming to review our pies. If they like what they taste, we could be featured in their weekend column." My heart skipped. "Oh, goodness. That's wonderful." She winked. "No pressure, Maggie, but your apple pie might be the star of the show." I got to work immediately. The rhythm came naturally: flour, butter, sugar, apples. Every slice, every pinch, Every swirl of cinnamon was a piece of me poured into that crust. As the pie baked, the air filled with the sweet smell of caramelized apples and memories. Customers began trickling in, their chatter and laughter filling the small space. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't invisible. People greeted me, thanked me, smiled because of me. When the food critic finally arrived, a tall man with glasses and a notebook, Laura introduced me. "This is the woman behind the magic," she said proudly, and I blushed. "Oh, I just follow old recipes. Nothing special." He smiled. "Sometimes the simplest recipes hold the most heart." He took a bite of the pie, paused for a long moment, and then nodded. "Warm, nostalgic, perfectly balanced. Reminds me of my grandmother's baking. You can't buy that kind of feeling." Laura and I exchanged a look, one of quiet joy. When he left, Laura hugged me. "You did it, Maggie." He loved it. I laughed, feeling like a little girl again. We did it. The rest of the day flew by. As I served customers, I noticed a family walk in, a young couple with 2 children. The little boy's laughter was contagious. He looked just like Eric's son, Michael. For a second, my chest tightened. I'd called Eric last night after work, but he hadn't picked up. Maybe he was still angry. Maybe he didn't care. Laura noticed the look on my face. "You okay?" I nodded, just thinking. She smiled softly. "You know, families fight, but they always come back. Give him time." I wanted to believe her. I really did. That evening, as we closed up, a man in a delivery uniform dropped off a small envelope addressed to Margaret Hill. Laura handed it to me. "Looks like mail found you here already." I laughed softly and tore it open. Inside was a folded piece of paper and a check from Eric. The note read, "Mom, please use this to pay your bills. I'm not angry, but I still think you should move somewhere safer. Working at a diner isn't what you should be doing at your age. Love." Eric and I stared at the paper for a long time. Then I folded the check back inside the envelope and placed it in my purse. That I didn't need it. Not this time. Over the next few weeks, the diner grew busier. The local paper's review came out. Laura's diner serves more than food. It serves memories. People started coming and asking for Maggie's apple pie. Laura even put it on the menu. Maggie's classic apple pie, baked with love. Every time I saw that name printed in neat script, my heart swelled. Sometimes small children would peek over the counter and ask, "Are you the Maggie?" And I'd smile, wiping flour from my hands. "Yes, sweetheart. That's me." But life has a way of testing happiness. One afternoon, as I was packing up after lunch, I saw a familiar car pull into the parking lot. Eric's. My breath caught. He stepped out, looking as polished as ever. His tie crisp, his expression unreadable. Laura looked from him to me. "You okay?" I nodded slowly. "I guess we'll find out." He walked in, glancing around the diner like it was beneath him. Then his eyes landed on me. In my apron, flour on my cheeks, holding a pie tin. "Mom," he said quietly. "Eric," I whispered. He sighed, pulling out a chair. "Can we talk?" Laura, sensing the tension, quietly moved to the kitchen. Eric leaned forward. "Mom, what are you doing here?" "I'm working," I said simply. "I told you that." He looked frustrated. "You shouldn't have to work. I can take care of you. You've earned rest." I smiled faintly. Rest from what? From life? From being useful? He shook his head. "You're missing the point. You could fall. Get hurt. I just want you safe." I reached across the table and touched his hand. "Eric, safety isn't the same as living. I'm safe here. I'm happy here. Isn't that what you wanted for me?" His expression softened. "I didn't realize you were unhappy." Tears filled my eyes. "Because I never told you. I didn't want to burden you. But now I see, love isn't about protection. It's about respect." He looked down, ashamed. "I'm sorry, Mom. I thought I was doing what was right." I smiled through my tears. So did I. He stayed for pie, and when he took the first bite, he smiled, the same boyish smile I hadn't seen in years. "Tastes like home," he said quietly. I laughed softly. "It is home." That evening, after he left, Laura came over and handed me a small piece of paper. It was a note from the critics editor. "Congratulations, Maggie," she said, beaming. "They want to feature you, your story, your journey, in next month's Sunday issue." I froze. "Me?" "Yes, you. They said your pies tell a story. They want to hear it." I pressed a hand to my chest. Oh my, for the first time in years, I wasn't just someone's mother or widow. I was Maggie Hill, baker, storyteller, survivor.